Hello guys, and welcome back to our DeI and Impera mechanics. In this episode, we'll talk about morale. So as you might know, morale is one of the core elements in Total War in general, and also in DeI and Impera it is even more important because it is much harder to actually break the enemy in DeI and Impera. And because of that, you will have to have a good understanding about how morale work in this game in order to win the battle. Now let's start from the basic. What is morale? Morale is the mental condition of a unit on the battlefield. It determines the will to fight of this unit, and if morale of this unit drops to zero, the unit will break and run away from the battlefield. In DeI Impera, different units will have different level of morale. We have the low tier unit who have very low morale and very easy to break. Then we have the professional unit which have much higher morale and much harder to break. And finally we have the elite unit who have outstanding morale and very difficult to break, and also they often come with the ability to encourage nearby friendly unit. So what can affect a unit morale? Actually, we have a number of things that can affect a unit morale, both on the campaign map and on the battlefield. Then let's find out what are they in the next part. On the campaign map, to increase our unit morale, we can have general skill, trade, ancillary, army tradition, Asian effect, technology, and even buff from buildings. But what we really care about is how to decrease the enemy morale, because you want to decrease the enemy morale to make them break very quickly, to minimize the amount of casualty it will take in the battle. It will be much more effective than increase your own morale. To decrease the enemy morale on the campaign map, we also have general skill, trade, and ancillary, and also over here we have a very powerful tool to actually decrease the enemy morale, which is the ambush stance and night battle. If we can ambush the enemy, we can reduce their morale by 25%, and night battle also give the defender another 20% morale decrease. Combined though with the general skill, trade, and ancillary, we can already reduce a lot of the enemy morale even before the battle starts. Next we'll talk about the morale on the battlefield. Okay, so on the battlefield, we also care about how to deal morale damage to the enemy, because if we understand how to deal morale damage to the enemy, we will know how to defend ourselves against the morale damage the enemy dealing to us. So there is a lot of factors that can affect a unit morale on the battlefield, but there are a few which has a very great impact, and here they are. First is taking casualty. So you can reduce a unit morale by simply dealing damage to them. The second is being attacked in the rear and flank. So attacking an enemy in the rear or flank will greatly reduce the enemy morale, so you should always try to do it. The third is friendly unit being routed. So if you can rout an enemy unit, you can decrease the morale of the enemy unit around this unit and cause a chain reaction to rout all of these units, which we call chain rout. The fourth is losing current combat, and it actually have great impact on the morale of a unit, but often overlooked by many players. So it means that that unit is taking much higher casualty than the unit they currently fighting, and I will explain is more in the next part. The fifth is being locally outnumbered by the enemy unit, and this is actually very interesting, and I will explain it more in the next part. The sixth is being near terrified creatures such as elephants or unit with the scare trait. It is also a very important factor to decrease the enemy morale, which we have to take into account. The seventh is the general is killed or flee, and this factor is actually being reduced a lot in Divide Empire because the AI is very bad at keeping their general alive. And the last factor is the army is losing, and this is also very interesting, and we will talk about this later in the next part. Alright, so that's all we need to know about morale. But what can we use this, and how can we apply it in an actual battle? So let's move to the next part, and I will show you some example. Okay, so in this example, we will have a very basic hammer and anvil tactic, where you use your infantry to pin the enemy in place, and use your cavalry and elephant to attack the enemy from the rear. But what exactly reducing the enemy morale here? So let's take a very closer look. Over here we are having our elephant attacking the enemy in the rear, and over here the enemy are being affected by being attacked in the rear, being near a terrified creature which is our elephant, and they are losing current combat very decisively, which is taking away a huge amount of this unit morale. So you can see they rout very quickly. It is because we are able to deal a huge amount of damage to this unit in a very short amount of time, and we call that a morale shock. This morale shock is calculated by the huge amount of casualty we are able to deal in a very short amount of time, which means if we let our units stay in melee, we will deal less the morale shock because our charge damage is going away, with charge bonus is going away, so we can still kill the enemy, but at a much slower rate, and in this case the enemy will be actually regain its morale and start fighting back, and in this case we will take a lot of casualty. The shock attack is actually have the strongest effect on the enemy morale. So if you are making an attempt to deliver shock attack to your enemy, but your enemy are not breaking, so just withdraw and make another attempt. Don't try to keep your unit in melee because the shock factor will go away and your enemy will regain its morale, and then this time you will find yourself in a very bad situation. Only keep your unit in melee if you sure you can cause a chain route like this. Next, we'll talk a little bit about being locally outnumbered by the enemy unit. And here we have an example, which is we are outnumbered greatly by the enemy. So in this situation, the enemy will have a huge morale boost if we let them stay together because they have a much greater local force compared to us. Then in order to be able to destroy their morale and break their unit, we have to separate their army, make them into smaller groups so they don't have the morale boost from being a greater local force. So this is the reason why I have to run my unit around the map like this and breaking the enemy into smaller groups so we can actually break them. If we let them stay in a very large group, it will be impossible for us to break them. And lastly, we'll talk about the army is losing factor. In which situation will we use this factor? And over here we have an example, and this time is when we have to face an enemy who has some unit which is very strong for us. And in this case, we have to face this pikeman, and we actually don't have any unit in this army who can deal with them. So what we will try to do here is we avoid fighting the pikeman at all costs and try to get rid of all of this other unit in this army. So they will take the armies it being loose moral penalty, and when there's only the pikemen left, we can easily deal with them and defeat them. So this means that it will save the strongest enemy for last, and when you have killed almost all of their army, so even the most elite unit of the enemy will take a very big moral penalty, and we will have a much easier time to actually defeat them. Okay, so in conclusion, the battle in DeI at Impera is all about damaging your opponent's morale, and the possibilities is only limited by your own imagination. So keep trying to find something new, and you will find it. Okay. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you guys will find this episode useful. And see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.